So, Ben, I want to hear from you. I think you have some really important perspectives about what it means to be a millennial entrepreneur, but really taking it kind of this next generation, really what we're seeing many millennials taking on is this kind of contractor role, and where you're linking up with other companies or other entities. And I call it the kind of the side hustle, but there's a little bit of a different perspective that you have. So I'd love to have you share a little bit about what it is that you mean, kind of this new wave of millennial contractors.
Sure. Well, I don't think we disagree at all. Your side hustle is like someone who's a full-time employee somewhere, but contracting to other firms kind of, nights and weekends, um, to make a little supplemental income. But what I'm seeing is not juxtaposed to that. It's just that what I'm seeing is people like me who you just can't kind of nail down into one area. So I mean, I do everything from like statistical analysis to run campaigns and ghost authoring books, and you just can't really fit that into a job anywhere. And I think that you see that everywhere in our generation. People who can't be. I mean, I think that's why people turn over their jobs so quickly in our generation. It's partly because of the market, but it's also partly just because it's hard to keep us engaged. I was actually meeting with a bunch of CEOs of Fortune 500s last week, and they were saying basically we have these creative, really smart kids, but we can't keep them for more than like 18 months. And why is that? And I said that primarily, from my perspective, the reason is we got bored doing whatever, sitting there in the accounting office or whatever. You need to mix it up some, have somebody go out on the factory floor a little bit, have someone from the factory floor come up and do engineering or something. Because, yeah, I don't know if it's just being a product of the Sesame generation or what, but we want to be challenged and we want to learn more and just keep on learning. And I think that contracting has made, and it first of all makes economical sense to do it, not only because of the money you get to earn, but because companies don't have to take the liability on of keeping you on long term, of hiring you, of maybe paying for your benefits. I mean, Obamacare is expected to have a pretty big impact on this. People are going to become more and more do contracting, in a legal way, just because people don't want to take on that extra expense. But so there's that reason, but then there's also just the fact that if you allow somebody to step in and do contracting work, they get to learn new things. They get to use different skills that you don't get to use if you're stuck with a specific job title at a faceless company, right? And so one of the things that my company does, we have a twofold mission, or I guess actually to be more exact, two objectives. One is to support the management of smaller nonprofits and manufacturing companies, and that is born out of kind of my heart and my partners' hearts to help our community. And we think that the biggest thing we can do is step in as maybe not 30-year consultant experts in a small manufacturing firm, but just come as you are as people who are willing to learn and invest ourselves into smaller organizations. And then the other side of that is to provide supplemental income to contractors who need it. So I've got a couple guys who are in seminary, a couple stay-at-home moms. These people are very talented. I think all of them have master's degrees, or at least have worked in the field. Yeah, they're higher educated than me, but they want to keep using their skills, and because of their different calling, their where they are in life, they're not able to use that kind of full time. And so we now see a business, I mean my small business, helping about 25 or 30 different organizations at this point. And it's really cool because what we get to do with our model is step in, like have me be the face, for instance, with one client. We'll step into the organization and kind of, I don't know, collect all the little odd jobs from the company, and then I just get to parse it out to all the different contractors that would do the best at helping client X with problem Y. And I think that you are going to be seeing that more and more and more. Again, because I think the market is kind of pushing us in that direction, and I think our temperament is kind of encouraging that.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I love that you called us the Sesame Street generation. I've literally never heard us called that before. So who knows? That could start going viral and replace the me generation. If there's like little like letters and numbers that start to like float over me, then we'll know that I've completely gone crazy. Um, it's terrifying how you remember those things. But no, but I completely agree. I think that we have this really short attention span, and a wise company like yours is taking that to use it as an advantage, as it's not necessarily bad that we want to do so many different things. So rather than a larger
Exactly.
company losing out on their employees who want to try out different things. I mean, like you said, you really are a jack of all trades. I mean, you can't just put you in one industry or one box, and we're seeing that with more and more generations as well. And so it's interesting to see kind of what the next couple of years really look like as we kind of evolve to as a society where we almost become more like boutique. Like we're more general, but I think we're also going to
Hmm.
be more boutique as well. But speaking of
Sure.
having a million things kind of going on at the same time, you are running for commissioner, which is incredible at
Yes.
26. I think that's fantastic. So, um, share with me a little bit about that thought process of when did you just wake up one day and you were like, I'm going to do it? Or was it like a dare? I mean, what came across your mind that you decided
Um,
to run for commissioner?
so I've gone back and forth as to whether I wanted to run for public office. I think maybe 10 years ago, it was kind of my dream to be a congressman. I didn't want to go higher than that because at that point you don't really know constituents and such. But um, I also didn't really see myself getting involved in like really local government. But I had a change of heart, well, two that I'll tell you about. One, living in D.C., with you, for what, a couple years, I really got the sense that the congressmen are not usually the ones that are like really making like day-to-day budgetary decisions and uh, real policy decisions. And if you want to have an impact, you should be like the chief of staff for a congressman who's got some decent power. So I kind of toyed with the idea of doing that. But then I had another change of heart, and it relates more to why I left DC about year and a half ago, and moved home. A very wise friend of mine asked, "What breaks your heart about society?" And without really even thinking about it, I said that what breaks my heart is to see people becoming so individualistic. They're not being involved in community events and like developing uh, community-based programs anymore. You see people coming dropping out of church. Robert Putnam does a great job of talking about this in Bowling Alone. People are just getting disengaged and they're sitting on their Wii's and their iPads and um, just not getting out there and being involved. So I was thinking back to my hometown, where I used to go to quilting bees with my mother, and I used to play baseball with the neighborhood kids every Tuesday night, and football a lot of afternoons, stuff like that. You saw people getting together to fix road problems and little infrastructure problems in the township. You just don't see that anymore. And so that really concerns me because having studied a little bit of political philosophy, Tocqueville says that that is the key to the linchpin, if you will, of a democracy is having people engaged on the local level. So when my friend said, "What breaks your heart about society?" and I was like, "Community engagement," he was like, "What are you doing in D.C. then?" And you completely disengaged from being involved in local level. And so I decided to go move home and focus on my square mile. So that's why I started my company. And I think that it's partly just a great selling point, but it's really quite honest. We really want to see like local small towns in western Pennsylvania where we're based flourish, and consequently the people in those towns flourish. And that's why I decided to run for commissioner too. I was not exactly dared, but was certainly encouraged by a lot of people who are already in government and or could afford to help support my campaign. And at first, I just seriously, I literally laughed when someone suggested it. Like, there's no way I'm getting involved in a local company, local problem like that. Um, I'm happy with my business and where I'm at. So at first I said that's ridiculous, no way. But I helped other people run this time around because I've run a few campaigns in the area. But more and more people started approaching me, and I was thinking, you know what? I can still accomplish kind of my main mission, which is, well, my vision to bring about a revival in small town community. And so I jumped in and haven't regretted it ever since. I've been rather flattered the amount of support people have been pouring into me and investing in me and my campaign and such. So yeah, it's been a fun ride, and it wasn't a hard decision, honestly. I made it very pretty quickly. Just made sure that I wasn't crazy. Asked my family and friends and business partners who were going to be implicated in it, and they were all encouraging. So I just kind of jumped in, kind of like I did with most of the businesses that I've started.
Jump first, think later. That's actually like not your personality at all. So, like,
Yeah.
you're very calculating, very, determined. But one thing that we were talking a little bit about before is like developing a culture and having a really strong team around you. And I think that that's something that you naturally do that I think we're seeing with more and more millennials is they say if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I know
Yep.
that's an approach that you really take is to bring people around you, whether they're your close business colleagues or your friends or even your family. But I'd love to hear a little bit from you about what does teamwork mean to you? How do you build an effective team?
hmm Is one area that I'm kind of calculated in, but also maybe not as much as you might think, because I've seen that when you just start thinking about who you need, like what skill set you need, often someone will come along. I mean, you might remember when you and I were starting Right Progress, I was really just thinking we need a development person. And then you came up on my LinkedIn page, and I was like, So contacted you, what, we met the next day or something. I mean, just be looking for opportunities. So be calculated about it, but also I would say hold everything lightly. Um, One of the things that a good friend of mine and business mentor told me once is to just hold everything lightly. And I think if I was going to give one piece of advice that just kind of transcends, the campaign world, the business world, nonprofit world, it just comes down to that. You need to hold things lightly. I would say to an extent you want to hold on to your mission, your core mission, but don't be too scared to allow that to drift a little bit. Which I know is a little bit radical because I hear so many people saying you got to get back to your core mission and all. And I'm actually reading a book right now on that, and to an extent, I totally agree. Also, don't get too hung up on business partners because they're probably going to leave you at some point. Hold that lightly. Hold your clients lightly. No one wants to get strangled. It's kind of like being in a dating relationship, right? You don't want to smother the other person. So, you know,
Yeah, I
uh,
compare everything to dating. I feel like it's just so applicable. So, yes. I'm always like,
that's
don't get married on your first date. Don't, freak him out and talk about like, look, created a timeline of our lives and this is what our children will look like. Don't do that with your clients. Like they're just trying to
yep.
get to know you too. Calm down, people.
And honestly, I was just meeting with a potential client the other day, and it usually helps to not freak them out like that. I mean, if you're just upfront and honest, you're like, hey, don't trust you just yet. We got to build trust. It usually calms them down and helps at the end of the day land that client. I would expect because they're saying, they're not so crazy and they're not jumping on, into this like, well, like a crazy girlfriend or something.
Yeah,
So,
that desperate, stage 5 clinger that they're like,
yeah,
please leave me alone.
yep.
I wanted to hear a little bit of your perspective of working since you have, created such diverse teams and you've been very mobile with those teams, what role has mentorship played in your life? And, what kind of access to information did you have to really help you become successful as an entrepreneur?
I have to credit my dad so much because I just watched the family business from the inside from when, I was in diapers all the way up. Um, and he's always been there
He was
to,
writing business
bounce
plans in
ideas.
diapers, people. Like, it's just, I'm telling you, Ben Kafferlin. Sorry, I couldn't help it.
No, but seriously, I mean, it sounds cliche, but really, just getting the advice of my father throughout everything has, you know, guided me in unbelievable ways. And he's really just watching his example has been, the big main mentorship. The what's I don't know. It helps, but it's honestly more of a thing on paper. The experience I gained was, through working kind of on the shop floor and getting some diversity and building up, from maintenance guy to, econometrician. um, so yeah, I'd say that mentorship sense from him was the biggest thing. But of course, there have been so many people along the way that I've just met with because I think they're really interesting people, and they end up giving those little snippets of advice that end up, really propelling in ways that they probably didn't expect. Like the guy who said, "Hold things lightly," just happened to come at the right time when I was kind of thinking about making a big change in the business, and the guy who said or asked that question, what really breaks your heart about society that you want to fix. I would just say, first of all, surround yourself with very wise people. Partly because it makes a lot of business sense, and partly because it will build your character. Um, and then again, the team will just come as you start to think about who's needed in order to bring about this vision, this compelling vision that you're able to share with them. And they'll come, and don't force them. Hold them lightly.
That's good. I love that piece of advice. And that actually just jumps into our lightning round, which is my favorite part, where I'm just going to ask you a couple of, yeah, it's scary, a couple of questions and just have you answer for the first thing that comes to mind. So are you ready?
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the first one is, what is the best piece of advice that you have ever gotten?
Well, I mean, I think we probably already touched on it, but I'll just repeat the hold things lightly. Um, I mean, I can think of a lot of others, but that's the one that seems to just transcend the worlds that I live in. So I'll say that.
Good choice. All right. So the next one is, what is the one business regret that you would do over if you could?
Hmm. It's kind of catch-22, but one problem with starting a business from marketing electronic devices to running political campaigns and goes is that you don't become great at anything. I mean, if you think of things as good, great, and excellent, I never need to be excellent at anything. I don't think. I'm fine with being a jack of all trades that's great at a few things. And unfortunately, I feel like I'm only good at a bunch of things. So I would like to not necessarily be a mile wide and an inch deep, or an inch deep and a mile wide. I kind of want to find a happy medium. And so, I guess my biggest regret is just that I didn't hone in on a few things that I could become really good at or great at. I heard a pastor not too long ago, say that when you're trying to analyze what in your life you need to give up because you're just stretched too far, think about what your job title is or what the function is that you do, and then try to put great in front of it. I don't think this works 100% of the time, but think about where you spend your time. You spend 2 hours a day on Facebook. Well, do you want to be known as a great social media person? If not, then you should probably tone that back. You want to be a great janitor? If not, cut that back or cut it out of your life. Find something different. And again, I don't think that that's 100% in your life that you should. As you're strategically planning about what you want to, your legacy, what you want to do with your life, try putting great in front of it and just see how it sounds.
That's good. That's really great advice. Well, today I spent 2 hours on the phone with Frontier Airlines, so I would not necessarily consider myself a great customer. By the time it got to me, to where they finally answered the phone call, I was trying to be a nice person. Okay, two more
Can
questions.
imagine.
One of my favorite questions is, what books are you reading right now?
Hmm. So I just mentioned the Mission Drift book. I actually was given it by Peter Greer, the author, and I love his heart and what he's doing. And I actually really love the book because I talked a little smack about it earlier, but that's because I was trying to kind of apply it to the rest of the world. And what he was saying was, look, Yale, for instance, started as a Christian university, and it's gone so far from that original mission, and that's a problem. And I would have to agree that there are often times where mission drift is a bad thing. These gradual changes in what you're doing not matching up with your original mission. And at the same time, there's always opportunity to hone and improve. You may remember that when you and I started, Right Progress with the other four, I think I said we're not changing the mission statement for one. And that was, I think, wise because there were many times where people would say, hey, here's some money if you'll change your mission or you change something that's core to who you are. And we stuck to the original for at least 12 months. And after that amount of time, we kind of had enough time to reflect and look at the options, and we were able to kind of hone it down a little bit more. But your mission is always something that's a little bit transient, and I think the vision is the thing that really should be more solid. Like, what is the world, what is the way you would like the world to be, and how you go about getting there should naturally drift a little bit. And then the other book that I just finished a little bit ago was Seth Godin's Tribes, which I, Godin is great at kind of drawing things out unnecessarily. It's kind of a lot of it's fluffy, but hey, it was worth the read. It's a quick read. I would definitely recommend it.
That is good. All right, and last question, and also one of my favorites. So, the 13-year-old version of Ben meets you today. What would he think about what you do?
Hmm. I'd like to think he'd be impressed. I wanted at like age 13 to be a mechanical engineer like my father and probably run that business, the family business. Um, I think that that was a fine, good dream to start with, and but I held that dream a little bit lightly, and it changed over the course of the years. I think you know I would be the 13-year-old me would probably look up to 26-year-old me.
That's awesome. I love hearing that, and the 13-year-old version of you definitely has something to look up to. So Ben, thanks so much
Right.
for joining us and giving some really important perspective and I think some really key insight about what kind of the next generation of entrepreneurship looks like. Definitely being more nimble, being more creative, and then really kind of using our affinity for mixing things up and changing careers to actually benefit companies and corporations
Mm.
rather than taking away from them as well. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.